Come on, you. Jets, Jets. What is going on, Jets fans? And welcome back to another Jets Ward live stream. I'm your host, Ryan Ward, and I'm so glad to be back with you guys. If you have been here before, welcome back. You know, I always love having you guys here in the Jets Ward with me, especially on these nights where we're just talking, chatting about football, talking about what's going on in these mini camps that have just passed us by. And if you're new here, welcome. You know you're always welcome, no matter if you're a Jets fan or a fan of another team. You are still always welcome in the Jets Ward. But guys, tonight I just wanted to live stream with you guys again. You know how the past couple weeks I've been talking to you guys about my power rankings. We've been going over the news for each team as well. And tonight we are going to discuss the power rankings for every NFL team's number one tight end, putting them from number 32 all the way to number one. But tonight is a special night. I am not doing this alone. I have my friend Rich from FishBowl Fantasy Sports. He is going to be joining me with his own tight ends power rankings. Welcome, Rich. How are you doing, my friend? How's it going?
Doing great, Ryan, and happy Father's Day weekend to you and all the dads out there.
Thank you very much, sir. Happy Father's Day to all those fathers out there. Tomorrow is going to be a big day for you guys. It's going to be great. But, Rich, what have you been up to, man? Your Titans are sounding pretty good so far. Cam Ward making some noise in minicamp.
Yeah, beyond my expectations, that's for sure. I'm super excited actually to become being a Titans fan finally. But, I have seen, the highest of highs from week ones for our rookie quarterbacks before. So, it's going to take obviously some time for me to really become accommodated with what we got, but no, things are looking good so far in training camp for the Titans. And, I'm excited to, talk a little bit about some sleepers that Titans have in the tight end position this year and, talk about some other players that we got going on. So it's going to be a fun show tonight. And don't forget, everybody, drop your comments in the sections and stuff. And make sure you like and subscribe Jets Ward if you're coming from my channel as well, too. So.
Thank you very much. Make sure you guys, when you come in, like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you do the same for my buddy Rich at FishBowl Fantasy Sports. He does great work over there. If you ever need any help when it comes to fantasy football and fantasy sports, it is great for you guys to join his channel as well. But like I said, we are going to be talking about our power rankings for the tight ends tonight. And I made my list. I know Rich made his list. Let's get into it. I'm going to show you guys my first guy ranked at number 32. We got the New York Giants tight end, Theo Johnson. He's 24 years old. He's 6'6", 264 pounds. Been in the league for 1 year. Had played 12 games last year. Had 43 targets for 29 catches, 331 yards receiving, and 1 touchdown. Really got thrown into the fire, in my opinion, because of Waller retiring. But I do think he's my 32nd ranked tight end. There's just so many better ones. Rich, who do you have as your number 32 tight end? Oh, you muted yourself, bud.
Yep, I was about to say, I'm just trying to fix that myself. Thank you.
No worries.
I have Theo. He actually just missed the cut. I had him at 33. Real quick with Theo, I think depending on who the quarterback is where he's going to max out the most. I think with Jackson Dart, the quarterbacks tend to, like I said in my earlier post, quarterback's best friend is the tight end. I think Theo would actually probably be, that sub 40 reception, 400 yard kind of receiving tight end for him. Maybe a couple of touchdowns, but not too much again because, tight ends nowadays, you got the rarities of 700, 800 yard guys. But I had him just missing out. My number 32, I had Ben Sinnott from Washington.
Okay. I didn't put him as their starter, and don't mind the guys, there are fireworks going on at the local horse farm around us. So if you hear fireworks, that is what's going on behind me. It's celebrating night, summer so far. Theo Johnson's an interesting one. I think he could be a solid receiver. Like you said, if Jackson Dart does start for the Giants, I think he could have better numbers, but I think Russell Wilson's going to end up being the starter for a while there. And I honestly think that Russell Wilson doesn't really like throwing to tight ends. Look at Pat Freiermuth last year for Pittsburgh. When Russell Wilson took over, didn't really get much of the targets like he got when Justin Fields was the starter. Russell Wilson likes to throw it down to his bigger receivers, hence George Pickens' numbers going up when he started last year. But Theo Johnson, your ranked 33 guy, my ranked 32 guy. So I think we're in agreement. For starters on these teams, I would agree Theo Johnson's probably on the lower mark of a tight end 1, solid tight end 2 type of player. So my guy for number 31, I got Will Dissly from the Chargers. He is 28 years old, 6'4", 265 pounds, has been in the league for 7 years at this point, played in 15 games last year, had 64 targets, 50 receptions, 481 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns. Solid blocking tight end, but not really known as a receiving guy. But solid blocker. I just don't think he's utilized really well in that Chargers offense. What about you? Who do you got at 31?
I have Noah Gray from Kansas City.
Ooh. Okay.
And again, now, not to confuse people, because I know Ryan's going off of, like, the depth charts. I'm going off the fantasy look. Noah Gray is an easy plug-and-play guy if something were to happen to Kelsey. So, he does get those targets, too, throughout, especially if there's any injuries to the receivers. They do tend to go to 2 tight end sets. But I do like Will Dissly. Dissly's another one of those guys, too, where with the Harbaugh offense, the tight end does seem to snag up some of the red zone touchdowns, and there's not really that big red zone threat for the Chargers. So I wouldn't be surprised if Dissly could be, one of those guys that got up to, 5-6 type touchdowns by the end of the season.
And you brought up Noah Gray as your number 31, and he is interesting because Travis Kelce's not getting any younger, guys. Mm-hmm. And Noah Gray got some looks last year, especially at the end of the year, because let's be real, Kansas City Chiefs really dealt with some injuries when it came to their receiving core last year. So Noah Gray could be a solid sleeper, especially in fantasy for you guys. Expect his numbers to go up, in my opinion. Good pick. I didn't even think about Noah Gray, honestly. He's a solid option.
Yeah, that's it. He could easily be a starter for some of these, bottom 5-6 teams too. So, they're pretty so fortunate to still have him on their roster.
Oh yeah, I think he becomes the number 1 after Kelsey leaves. I think he's got a good thing there in Kansas City, and like I said, Kelsey's been dealing with some stuff the past couple of years with injuries wise, so he's been missing games here and there. So, not a bad pull there. But now going into my number 30 guy. I got Brenton Strange from the Jaguars. He's 24 years old, 6'4", 253 pounds. He's 2 years in experience, played in all 17 games last year, had 53 targets, had 40 receptions, 411 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns. Biggest issue with him, he's more of a receiving tight end, and which is good for fantasy numbers. Problem is, he had really back and forth quarterback play. You have Trevor Lawrence, then he gets hurt. Then you have Mac Jones, then Trevor Lawrence comes back, then Mac Jones comes back in. So he dealt with a lot of clutter from the quarterback room and just a down year for the Jaguars as well. So Brenton Strange right now is my number 30 option, but that could change depending on if Trevor Lawrence can stay healthy and how well he utilizes Brenton Strange as tight end.
No, completely agree, and I think he filled up that role nicely for the absence of Evan Ingram with Jacksonville last year. So I would actually expect that offense to get much better. This is really the prove-it year for Trevor Lawrence, I think. You either know what you have with him or you don't. New head coach, new offense is going to be ran. I like the pickup of their head coach as well, too. So I do expect Jacksonville to get much better this year, and I think they are my favorites, actually, win the AFC South this year.
So you got the new coach, Cohen. Do you think he's going to run, like, tight ends, a big tight end set, like passes to him? Because look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. With all their weapons they had, Cade Otton didn't have a bad season last year.
No, and we were just talking about Otton right before the show started. The absence of Chris Godwin, Cade Otton was extremely useful. First off, his breaking tackle ability. The guy was pinballed around. He had, I think, the Sunday or Monday night game last year where he went off for like 89 or like that in a touchdown. His hand's really good, and again, he's a very good third down tight end, and he'll be popping up on my list a little bit later. But I don't know if they're going to go extremely high on the, maybe a 2 tight end set as much as they kind of ran in Tampa, but they do have, like I said, they have some weapons on that offense. Travis Hunter obviously being a big addition for them to play that slot role and deep threat mobility. But like I said, I think Strange, who I actually have much higher on my list, I have him on 22 for my list.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come down to Trevor Lawrence again. But again, Strange actually had a pretty decent season with Mac Jones helping out last year. So
yeah, so God, Strange, I think, is going to have better numbers. I don't know how much better, honestly, but we will see from that. I think he's going to be solid this year. But right now, he's my number 30. I'm just interested to see how Trevor Lawrence uses him. Trevor Lawrence loved Ingram when he was there, and Ingram had a really good season the year before. But let's see how this guy does. But number 29 for me, I got Tommy Tremble. And the reason I have him so low is because of injuries. He played in 12 games last year. He was injured a good amount the season before. He's 25 years old, so still young. 6'4", 250 pounds. Games played, like I said, he's got 4 years experience. He played in 12 games, had 32 targets last year, 23 receptions, 234 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. Young guy, can block, can be a threat when it comes to the receiving option quicker than a lot of people think. It could be used as a bigger slot. The problem is just injuries. He's always hurt, and there are some games where he just disappears as well. So the consistency with him is very, very rough. And now let's see if Bryce Young can take that next step as a young quarterback as well. So it's going to be interesting. I think this is a prove-it year for Tremble as well, along with Bryce Young. What do you think? Who do you got?
So I did have Chig Okonkwo at 30, but I'll explain that a little bit later when we get to
okay.
my next tight end. But actually, at this round, I did have 29 for you. I have his counterpart. I have Jatavion Sanders at number 29.
Ooh, talk to me about Sanders a little bit, because I don't know if a lot of people know him that well.
So, yep, let me actually pull up his season last year. But Sanders actually filled in quite well with the injuries of Trumbull last year. I built up quite a rapport with Bryce Young a little bit. He had 33 catches, 342, and a touchdown, so very comparable numbers to Tommy Tremble last year. He had a couple breakout games. For fantasy-wise, it was over like 8 or 9 points for a tight end is really good. I just think the younger guy, they went with him last year. He's coming off his second year. I actually kind of expect him to take over the role from Tommy Tremble coming up this year.
Definitely could. It really depends on Bryce Young. Who is he going to want? Yeah. Tremble, when healthy, is a solid option. That's the problem, though, when healthy. That's why I have him so low. But he's shown flashes of being a really good tight end.
Yep.
Next, for number 28, I've got Chig Okonkwo from the Titans. This is your guy, bud. You know more about him than I do, but he's still young. 25 years old. He's 6'3", 238 pounds. Been in the league for 3 years. Played 17 games last year. So a solid guy who can stay healthy, which is really great. Has 70 targets, 52 receptions, 479 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. I think he's much better than these numbers say. Honestly, he's very talented and a solid blocker as well. He really reminds me of Algie Crumpler, as a younger version of him, which you guys know about as well because you had him on your team at one point. I honestly think Okonkwo can be really, really good. The problem was your quarterback last year was not great as well. So talk to me a little bit. Do you think Cam Ward will use Chig Okonkwo a lot better? And who do you have at ranked 28 as well? Before that, just shout out to Chris B, CB Jets fan. He says, please like, support, subscribe to Jets Ward, New York Jets YouTube channel. He deserves it. Hit the like button, thumbs up. Incredible New York Jets content creator, person, and fan representing our Jets fan base community. I really appreciate you. He is one of our top guys in the chats, always here, loving the channel, and we appreciate you here on the Jets board. We thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us. And let us know who your tight ends are ranked as well, buddy. Please let us know. All right. Oh, I lost Rich. Let's see if I can get him back real quick. There he is. Welcome back, bud.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna hit that one button. But no, thank you, Chris, and have a good night yourself too, buddy.
And he also says, hope you are all doing well today, my friends. Go Jets. Rich, hopefully you are doing well today, my friend. So nice. He's such a good guy. We really appreciate you, Chris. We hope you're having a great night as well. I hope you're enjoying the stream so far. And like he said, please hit that like button when you guys come in. It really helps the channel. And Rich and I know we really appreciate it, guys. But going into it, Rich, who do you have as your number 28 tight end? And what do you think of Chigakonkwo? I would love to hear your opinion on him because you know him personally as your Titans tight end. So
Chig has the size. He has the ability to possibly be a breakout candidate this year. The hands, key drops at key times last year, actually throughout his whole career. Fumbles. It's the little stuff he's got to really clean up on because obviously he has the elite size for a tight end. He has elite speed. But just again, and it's inconsistent quarterback play that's always been trickling down on the Titans since, Ryan Tannehill has left. I actually have him one spot below his counterpart, Gunnar Helm. Something about Gunnar Helm with his explosive speed, he could obviously break free. He's going to be more so, I don't want to obviously compare him to Travis Kelce, but he's going to be, the guy that could get open on third downs I'm hoping for. Coming out of Texas, he had like 60 catches for 700 yards and 7 touchdowns last year in college. So I do expect them both to kind of be similar counterparts with each other. As far as number 28 on my list is your rookie tight end, Mason Taylor. I have, but we'll talk about him a little bit when he comes up, I'm sure, on your list. Chig has the potential to possibly be, that good, 60 target or 60 reception, 600-yard kind of guy. Obviously, touchdowns is just something that the offense is going to have to get better at in general to get into the red zone. So, but I do like Chig, though. Just, clean up the little bits, work on the hands and catch them. So
I think the big thing is just the quarterback play. It's really important. And now that you guys got Cam Ward, and I love that you brought up Gunnar Helms too. He's a really solid player. He had a little bit of an injury during the scouting combine. His ankle was jacked up, but he was still able to put up some good numbers there. I think Gunnar Helms is a sneaky good option as well. You guys have 2 solid tight end options, honestly. Let's see how Cam Ward uses them. That's the biggest question. His consistency.
Yep.
So going into my number 27, I got Tyler Higbee from the Rams. He's on the older side. He's 32 years old. He's 6'6", 255 pounds. Has been in the league for 9 years now. Played in 3 games last year. Had a very serious injury last year. I believe it was a neck injury that he was dealing with. Had 12 targets for 8 receptions, 66 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns. Matt Stafford likes targeting his tight ends. The problem is now he's got 2 really good wide receivers in Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, who Tyler Higbee, it's going to hurt his numbers, in my opinion. So I have Tyler Higbee because of the injury last year and because of the new option or the 2 receivers that the Rams have. I have Tyler Higbee as my number 27 option.
Right, and for the same reasons as you were saying as well, too, with him. Higbee, a couple years ago, he was starting to break out of that until obviously the big injury. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of throw him back in. Whether if they work him in slowly or not will be, big to see. I think the offense, and I think that this team is a very underrated team going into the season. Their defense has gotten much better. I think they have probably one of the best young front sevens in all of football, led by Jared Verse. Their offensive line has gotten much better, which obviously, if you're keeping Stafford upright, you're going to be scoring some points. So it'll be interesting to see how Higbee plays. At this rate on mine, I actually have Harold Fannin Jr. from Cleveland actually at this spot. But again, back to Higbee, I do see him kind of getting back into that like 50 for 50, probably 5-6 touchdown range again.
Yeah. I love your Harold Fannin pick because that was somebody I wanted the Jets to target. If we didn't get Mason Taylor in the draft, Fannin was a guy that I was big on too as a receiving option. He's not much of a blocker, but numbers wise, he can be a very, very big matchup nightmare for a lot of defenses. So he's solid. He reminds me of like a bigger version of a Kyle Pitts.
Yep.
And everything, and a slower version of a Kyle Pitts, but he's still like great hands, can maneuver around, tough to take down. That's a really good pick for fantasy purposes and everything. I like Fannin a lot.
And it doesn't take much to numbers-wise to get ahead of Kyle Pitts, which we'll talk about later today too. So
I'm still so high on Kyle Pitts. I think he could do so much. But my number 26 guy, this is a guy that I think has been disappointing in his career. Mike Gesicki from the Cincinnati Bengals. He's 29 years old. He's 6'6", 245 pounds, 7 years experience. Played in 17 games last year, was targeted 83 times, 65 receptions for 665 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. The guy's got the size of a perfect tight end and can run as fast as any DB in the league. The problem is he went from Miami, where he had some great numbers, to Cincinnati, where should be getting better numbers, even though Jamar Chase, T. Higgins are there. It just hasn't really worked out in this guy's career, which has been a very big disappointment for Mike Gesicki. And he's getting older now. He was never a blocker, so he has to rely on the receiving numbers. And the problem is those numbers are just going down and down every single year.
Yeah, correct. And the thing watching Gesicki last year, I don't think it was obviously like the targets, because I think you have it there, 83 targets he had last year. So obviously he was getting the opportunity. He was being trapped within the 5-yard line. And the Bengals, the touchdowns that they could score, they had issues in the red zone area besides trying to think who the third receiver was on that roster.
It was somebody that I think they were having issues.
Starts with an I. I can't remember what it was. But, it's like Gesicki, he's one of those guys where he has those big breakout games and it will disappear. But, I don't think the Bengals really, solidified their defense as much as what fans were hoping for. So their offense is going to have to score 30, 40 points a game. So at least fantasy-wise, we love guys like Mike Gesicki because he's going to get those opportunities. But, he just, in 7 years doesn't sound like it's much, but, in tight end world, you're starting to creep up in that age where you start falling out too. So, but yeah, this is actually in that same range where I have Gesicki. I have Dalton Schultz at this rank right now. So
I think Schultz might be my next one, actually.
Yeah, I think you hit that gray area with tight ends at this spot where it's like
exactly. It's like this is where you're going to find Gesicki, Hunter Henry, Schultz. So moving on to my number 25, I got Dalton Schultz. Yeah.
And we did not look at each other's rankings before the show, so I was wondering how many matches we'd get.
Ooh, great question by Chris B. right now. He's got, sorry to interrupt your rankings. I'm wearing my Jets shirt watching this. Speaking of tests, thoughts about Mason Taylor, smooth route runner, ability, strength, possession, tight end, makes moves, blocking, catcher. So I'll take this one because I love Mason Taylor. And the thing that has me really riled up about him is just listening to AG talk about him, especially from OTAs to the mandatory minicamp. He's a fantastic receiver, has great hands, is a matchup nightmare. You can line him up in the slot or have him run down the seam. I think he's going to be big. He's going to have the second most targets on this team, in my opinion. Garrett Wilson, we know, is going to get the ball to him a lot, especially with Justin Fields. But don't forget, Justin Fields loved his tight ends. Look at what Colt Kmet's numbers with Justin Fields as his quarterback. Mason Taylor is a very talented young man who is still getting better and better. And AG really talked about his blocking, which he said was very, very impressive. So Mason Taylor, I think, is going to be very, very good. So I think he's going to be awesome. What do you think, Rich?
No, actually, I agree. And all I needed to watch to become a fan of Mason Taylor was his gauntlet video, or from the combine. You watched that. That was probably one of the most impressive feats ever for anybody going through the gauntlet. But yeah, I'd say Mason Taylor, I think, if the pass blocking is there and he becomes that all elite tight end, I could see him being, a key factor on that offense for years and years and years to come. So, and I'm hoping for it because we were big fans of his father. So
I was a big fan of his father too, especially when he was with the Jets. Not so much as a Miami Dolphin, but going back with
complete opposite.
One more thing on Mason Taylor as well. I really like that he reminds me a lot of Sam Laporta from Detroit.
Yes.
And the Jets brought over the tight end coach from Detroit as well. He was we brought him over as an offensive lineman coach, but he worked with the tight ends as well. And the best thing about it, look at Sam Laporta. When he was first drafted, he was not a great blocker. He turned into one of the better blockers in the league under this guy's tutelage and in that offense over there. So I'm really, really hoping that he can do some work with Mason Taylor as well. And Chris has some more comments. He says the guy we were looking for with the Bengals, Yosavas, which was their third option, who really popped out last year. Thank you very much for that, Chris. And another comment, hopefully Mason Taylor, our New York tight end, is like Cole Kmet, Sam Laporta tight end. That combine gauntlet was incredible. He reminds me of Sam Laporta so much, and I'm really hoping, just like how Justin Fields loved Cole Kmet, I'm really hoping he can build that relationship with Mason Taylor as well. And thank you very much for mentioning the new coach that we brought over, Steve Hayden. He was the tight ends coach over in Detroit, brought him over as our offensive line coach. So I'm really, really excited to see what we could do for him. And it's going to be great. I think Mason Taylor is going to be very, very good. And he's going to show up somewhat soon in this video. I promise you guys that. But getting back into the tight end, I got Dalton Schultz as my number 25 guy. He was somebody I really wanted years ago when he was first leaving Dallas, because he was I thought there was so much potential there and they just weren't using him properly. He's 28 years old. He's 6'5", 242 pounds, a solid size for a tight end. Been in the league for 7 years, played in 17 games last year, had 85 targets, 53 receptions, 532 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns. The guy's a solid blocker. I just wish his numbers receiving were a lot better because he's a very elusive tight end. It's just not coming together, which is shocking with C.J. Stroud being your quarterback there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And you would think by how good the Texans were that the usage of him would be much better. But you see the discrepancy there, 85 targets to 53 receptions. Mm-hmm. A lot of that has to deal with, poor offensive line play, so having to hurry to get that ball out. So, inaccurate throws from C.J. Stroud, which is what we saw last year. They're not going to get much more help besides the new rookies that they drafted, Higgins and Noel. So I think they'll be plug-and-play guys. But I think they're actually going to rely a little bit on Schultz a little bit more, especially in the beginning part of the year as they get the rookies ready to go with Nico coming back healthy. So it'll be interesting to see how they go with them. They did not address the offensive line issue.
They traded away their best lineman.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see what Houston does. I do see the Houston Texans being one of those teams that do take a step back this year. But again, it's the AFC South. The AFC South and the NFC South just seem to be the divisions where anybody could win at any particular year, no matter how the teams look in paper. So, that's when I have Hunter Henry ranked in case.
I think actually Hunter Henry's my next guy up.
Yeah.
So, getting with Dalton Schultz too, you said you think his numbers are going to be a little better. I don't, honestly, because Texans, they have lost 2 of their best receivers. Tank Dell is out for the year next year, and Stephon Diggs is a Patriot now. Yeah. Nico Collins is coming back, but they also drafted 2 really good receivers, both from Iowa State, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, who I think are going to be very, very good receivers this year as well. So I think that's more of the passes getting pulled away from Schultz. So I think it's going to be a tough year for him as well. But it's interesting to see. He's still going to be good at blocking, which is one of his strengths. Let's see if he can turn this around and get more of those receptions. We'll see.
I'm starting to think that might be why they're utilizing him more, because they need the help in the offensive line.
Possibly, yeah. But hey, they did trade for Kenyon Green. He's there as their guard now.
Yeah,
he's been okay, I guess.
Depth pieces for other teams, right?
Exactly. Who was your 25th one? Did you say it was Hunter Henry?
Yes, Hunter Henry.
Good pick. I like Hunter Henry a lot, but that's why I have him right here at 24.
Yep.
So getting into the 24, I got Hunter Henry. He's 30 years old, 6'5", 249 pounds. Been in the league for 8 years. Played in 16 games last year, 97 targets for 66 receptions, 674 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. He's sneaky good. He went over to the Patriots and has had a jumble of quarterback play over there as well. So, but still putting up some okay numbers. He's 30 years old. The receiving core over there in New England isn't the best. Stephon Diggs, I've already mentioned him, coming off a serious injury last year. So we'll see how Drake May uses Hunter Henry. They got Vrabel as their head coach now, and he likes tight ends over there. So let's see what we do with Hunter Henry. What's your opinions of Hunter Henry?
Obviously, you look at the stats, and like I've said it once, we'll keep saying it the rest of the show. Rookie quarterback, he was the main guy to go to last year. There was absolutely no help on the receiving end for any of the Patriots last year. So I think that it kind of continues going on to this year. Diggs, I mean, depending on how well he comes off that injury, will be determined. Obviously, Vrabel loves using those goal line tight ends as well. So I think this is really big year coming up, I think, for Hunter Henry. He would probably be a little bit higher on my list. I did actually forget him when I was doing my first original 32. But no, I actually expect the Patriots to be much better on offense. They have an offensive line now. Drafted, was it Will Johnson, right?
No, Will Johnson was the cornerback.
Johnson.
They got the guy from LSU.
Yeah.
So it's their left tackle.
I can't think the names out tonight. But yeah, like I said, I think the Patriots are going to be the team, probably a sneaky team to maybe finish second in that AFC East. So I wouldn't be kind of shocked that, the Patriots with Vrabel as head coach, they take steps up, and Hunter Henry is going to be a key part of it.
They're a very underrated team. I think they're going to be solid this year. Mike Vrabel's a hell of a coach. So I think they're going to be, as a Jet fan, I hate to say it, but I think they're going to be really good this year. We're going to be battling them for that second spot, in my opinion. Bills, we know what the Bills are. But I think the Jets are going to be battling the Patriots for that second spot in our division.
Yeah.
And going into my number 23, I've got Jake Ferguson from Dallas. Now, he's a younger guy, too. He's only 26 years old. He's 6'5", 244. Been in the league for 3 years. Played 14 games last year. Had 86 targets, 59 receptions for 494 receiving yards, 0 touchdowns. I don't know why Dallas doesn't like to throw to their tight ends. He had 86, 0 touchdowns. This kid could be really good. When he was coming out of college, he was a solid option. It's just hasn't been going right for him there. And even though Dak is their quarterback, I feel like Dak tries to force feed it to CD all the time. And this guy is open basically almost every play too. He's very sneaky athletic. So what's your opinions on Jake Ferguson, and who's your 23rd ranked tight end?
So he's probably one of the first guys where his stats kind of show by, with Cooper Rush being the quarterback for them half the year last year, where his, his targets kind of went down a little bit from the time that Cooper Rush was their guy. I do expect him to take definitely a bounce up year. I think they're going to be more of like a spread the ball out kind of thing with Schottenheimer being their being their head coach. But I don't. He was kind of tough to rank on mine. I do have him actually much higher because I do think Dallas is going to be more of a complete offense this year, and I don't think Dak's going to be having to focus so much on CD, with the pick up of Pickens. And I think they're going to get the running game going on with a couple of key pieces there. But I do see him, obviously, the 0 touchdowns, that's, like I said, an outlier just because of how bad the offense was for Dallas last year as far as getting into the end zone. But I have him actually, like I said, much higher, and we'll talk about where he is on my list. At this range, I actually have Brenton Strange actually listed at for 23.
Cool. You're higher on Brenton Strange than I am, and higher on Jake Ferguson as well. I love hearing the different opinions and everything, and it's okay to have differing opinions. We're gonna see what happens with these guys. Anything could happen. Jake Ferguson could end up being the best tight end in the league this year. We don't know. It's you never know what's gonna happen. But coming from 23 going to 22, I've got Evan Ingram. Broncos starting tight end. Now, I think he's going to have a bounce back year. Only played in 9 games last year, was dealing with a lot of injuries, just like Trevor Lawrence was. Problem is, he's 30 years old now. He's not getting any younger. 6'3", 240, been in the league 8 years. 64 targets last year for 47 receptions, 365 yards receiving, 1 touchdown. He's your typical bigger slot receiver, tight end. He's not a blocker, but fantasy guys love this guy because he's going to get you those numbers. Now, only 9 games last year, so the injuries did pile up on him. But when he's healthy, he's not that far off from coming off a 1,000-yard receiving year. So now having Bo Nix as your quarterback, Bo Nix, the biggest issue we had with him last year, he didn't have a security blanket. Tight ends are your security blanket, and I think Evan Ingram and Bo Nix are going to really have a good connection there as long as Evan Ingram comes back healthy.
And that's going to be the key with Evan Ingram, obviously, his health, and that's been kind of his bug throughout his whole career, even with the Giants as well. I actually have Evan Ingram actually at my number 8 tight end for fantasy.
Dang.
Yes. Denver and that offense, like I said, that they have been just improving throughout. They got some key pieces now with running backs now. That offense, which shocked many people with how they played last year, is only going to get better, I think. Evan Ingram, like I said, he's still in that prime, 29, 31 year age. Coming off that injury, of course, is going to be the concern, but he's going to be a key feature on that offense when he's on the field. So, and like I said, he's like you mentioned before, only a couple years off the almost 1,000-yard season that he had. I honestly think that Broncos, they're probably one of the favorites to actually run the table in the West. So I can't wait to see the Broncos offense this year.
I could definitely see the Broncos winning that division. I think they're good. Bo Nix takes that next step. Watch out for the Broncos. Their defense is still really good. Offense, Cortland Sutton as your number 1 receiver is never a bad thing, especially if he stays healthy like he did last year. They're going to have some big numbers there. Who's your 22nd ranked tight end?
I have Tyler Higbee here.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, just a nice bounce back, I think, for him.
I think judging tight ends in fantasy is always so difficult.
Yes.
Like, have these big name guys. Like, luckily I had Kittle last year, but you have guys like Kyle Pitts who you think should be monsters in fantasy, and they just let you down. But then you have tight ends like Brock Bowers, who went off last year and nobody knew what he was going to be.
Yeah.
Even having in my other league, Sam Laporta, there would be weeks where he scored 5 and other weeks where he scored 20. You never know with these guys.
Yeah, I'm starting to think maybe on National Tight End Day you play 2 tight ends, and that's the only time you ever play 2 if you have them in a flex spot.
Oh, yeah. Honestly. Going into my number 21, I have Noah Fant from the Seahawks. I like Noah Fant. I think he's not talked about enough still. Having Sam Darnold now over there, Sam Darnold does like to throw the tight ends every now and again. So he's only 27 years old. He's 6'4", 249 pounds. Been in the league for 6 years. 14 games played last year. 48 receptions for 500 yards receiving and 1 touchdown. He's your prototypical receiving tight end as well. I think he's not talked about a lot because Geno Smith, honestly, great quarterback, but when you had DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett there, and you're not going to really throw it to your tight ends a lot when you have those solid receivers who are always open. Noah Fant got dinged up a little bit last year as well, but I think Noah Fant could be a heck of a receiving threat, and I think he's very underrated, and that's why I have him right now as my number 21 tight end. I think he's going to have a bounce-back year.
Right, and would you say that I know Geno with like his great completion percentage he had. Do you think it was over or underwhelming still for that offense with the weapons that they had?
Oh, absolutely. They should have ran the table in that division, especially since San Francisco was doing so bad. Mm-hmm. The Cardinals, their defense wasn't great last year, and the Rams, they were beatable in the beginning of the season. So the Seahawks should have ran the table, and the reason they didn't was beginning of the season, their offense didn't look great at all.
Yeah, because I'm starting to really project the Seahawks wise to kind of still be in that sub 500 range for record wise, because I don't see much of an improvement with Darnold as far as as far as like the leadership aspect. I do think that their offense may be a little bit better because he is more of like that gunslinging type of quarterback. So he is not afraid to throw the ball down the field, as you saw with the Vikings last year. Kind of over heavily relied on, those 15, 20-yard passes when it came to playoff.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, Fant, I do like Fant. I actually have him. Let me see. We're on 21. Yeah, actually, I have Fant here.
Oh, wow, we agree.
Yep, I was about to say. I just saw he actually was on my 21st. So, I expect similar stats for him. Obviously, touchdowns might go up and whatnot. But yeah, as I said, I think the Seahawks are one of those teams too on the cusp of possibly breaking through, and it's going to obviously come down to with all of your team, obviously, quarterback play.
I think that division over there is going to be really, really good.
Yeah.
If the Niners bounce back, the Cardinals are getting better as well. Do you think the Seahawks took a step down from quarterback, going from Geno to Sam Darnold?
My projection-wise, from what they ended up last year, is very similar. But like I said, I think you're going to get more deep shots, I think, for Seattle, as you were kind of lacking with Geno a little bit. But yeah, I do. I think it's probably about the same from what you were getting production-wise last year. Turnover-wise, Darnold and Geno just kind of remind me of the same exact kind of type of player. Just one's a little bit more accurate, but one's more dependent on the, intermediate or not intermediate routes, but like, the 15, 20-yard plays. So, like I said, I think it's going to be very similar to what they had last year.
It's going to be interesting because they got rid of the deep threats there in Seattle. DK Metcalf was your deep threat. Now you have 3 slot receivers in Jackson Smith and Jigba, Cooper Kupp, and I know they got one more guy over there, but there's slot receivers over there, the small shifty guys. So I don't know if the deep shots are going to be that much unless you're going to have Jackson Smith and Jigba just burn it down the field.
Yeah, and I love JSN this year for fantasy.
I do too.
I think they're going to be a very heavy offense as far as like passing. I think this year, JSN is just going to be a target monster.
Oh yeah, I think so too. Now getting into number 20, I have Dallas Goedert. And the reason I have him so low is injuries. He's getting older, and he's always injured every season. And they were wanting to trade him this year. So I think they're seeing the decline in him. So I have him ranked right here. He's 30 years old, 6'5", 256 pounds, been in the league for 7 years, played in 10 games last year, 52 targets, 42 receptions, 496 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. He disappears a lot. And he has some games where you're like, oh, there he is. Finally, we're seeing what he can do. And then there are just like, oh, I guess this Eagles are playing with no tight end today. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I don't see him being a big fantasy guy this year. I actually see the next guy who was a former Eagle that I have ranked at number 19 being more of a threat, and he's older. But Dallas Goedert right now, I get nervous about him because if a team's trying to get rid of you, then they see something wrong with you. They see something that not everybody else is seeing. And it says something too that nobody was trying to trade for him either. So Dallas Goedert right now worries me a little bit, but you never know. He could be shocked. He could shock you and play a 17-game season and be the tight end everybody thinks he should be.
Yeah, I'd say in that Eagles offense, like you were just actually like stating just now with like how the disappearing acts come. That's with all their pass catchers, and I think their offense is sometimes too explosive through Saquon that they will just stop throwing the football. So it's going to affect your your receiving stats. But really, a 10-game season, you had 52 targets, 42 catches, almost 500 yards. That's a really good season for full season players. So for it to only have 10 games played and having those stats, I mean, that's very impressive. But again, I honestly think all on fantasy wise, I think right now where players are going for the Eagles receiving wise and whatnot, they're much higher because their offense is so good. But I think that they should be much lower because, again, they're so well developed. They obviously relying more so on the running game. You're not going to get the red zone targets because of the touch push. So I have him actually. I do have him a little bit higher. This is where I have Kyle Pitts, and again, we will talk about him a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know. He worries me, man. Dallas Goedert worries me.
And health is going to be a big thing with him as well.
Yeah, he's never healthy.
Yeah.
He gets hurt every season and misses games. That's the biggest issue. I don't think he's had one full season.
Yeah.
But getting into my next guy, I already mentioned him, former Eagle. I got Zach Ertz. I really like Zach Ertz. He's 34 years old. Was really big relied on by Jaden Daniels last year, as you see by the numbers. He's been in the league for 13 years. He played all 17 games last year, 91 targets, 66 receptions, 654 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns. The guy is a monster. If he stays healthy with those numbers, I would take these numbers. The touchdown numbers are good for a tight end. And Jaden Daniels loves throwing this guy the ball. So Zach Ertz is my number 19 guy here.
I'm actually one off. I actually have him ranked 18. 19, I have Kate Otten. But back to Zach Ertz, I do think Washington's offense is going to be I mean, they were already really good last year. I do see them possibly being the number one offense in football. They solidified the offensive line need, added another weapon with Debo. So depending on Debo's health, I obviously I do think it affects Zach Ertz a little bit coming down. But Zach Ertz was the key guy on third down for this offense all of last year. He's not going to be that guy that's going to break free for 20, 30-yard pass plays. He's going to be, a prototypical goal line tight end, but he's going to be there in key clutch plays, and which is what he was last year, and he was very highly dependent on. Besides, McLaurin, he was their next go-to guy on that offense. So it's just amazing how, again, the free fall from Kelsey, which we'll come back to in a little bit, compared to Zach Ertz actually becoming better with age again. Back to his elite status, and it's amazing how he's still able to perform at this level, such an old age, 34.
Do you think that are you worried at all with the Terry McLaurin issue going on there? How him holding out?
I'm not. That is a organization that is known to not spend money on the big play guys and more develop within. But I think they will get a deal done, and I'm not too concerned with him. He should get paid because McLaurin was their man last year.
Mm-hmm. Especially now, there was a video that came out where Debo Samuel looked a little overweight at minicamp and everything and looking a little bit slower. So that's a worry for them. But get one thing, Justin Mapes is in the chat. Hi, Justin. What's going on, buddy? Hope you're doing well. He says, I wouldn't trust Zach, but not bad option for fantasy football. And you're right. With those numbers, tight ends with those numbers are not a bad option, honestly. So I agree with you, Justin. Trust him as your number one tight end, but for fantasy, not bad. Not bad at all if you need him to do a spot start for you.
Yep. And like I said, I do see them actually equipping Ben Sinnott a little bit more in the offense this year. So,
hi, Justin. I do agree with you as well with that one. But getting into number 18, this is where I have Mason Taylor. I really like Mason Taylor. I think he's going to be very solid. I know I'm a Jets fan and preaching him. You could say that I'm being a homer for my team, but I have him 18 because he's only 21 years old. He's 6'5", 251 pounds. He was a rookie. He looked awesome at LSU last year. The Jets got him in the second round, picked number 42. Had great numbers for the Tigers last year, and just a guy who has the receiving element under his belt already and is getting better as a blocker. I think with Garrett Wilson being your number one receiver and this guy being your number two or your number two option, your number one tight end, I think he's going to be a monster down in the seam or right across the middle. Like Zach Ertz was the guy that you rely on when it's third down and short. Watch Mason Taylor being that type of guy too. And he could also burst out and outrun some people too. So don't think that he's not going to get his explosive plays because I really think he will.
Yeah, like I said, as we were talking about before with Mason Taylor, I think he's going to be pretty solid for years to come, as long as he keeps health going on. But that offense itself too, I think Justin Fields, he's had his numbers with tight ends haven't been too impressive, but he did have a pretty decent year, I think 2 years ago with Cole Kmet. And that's where statistic-wise I see Mason Taylor being, in which I think he had Kmet much higher or at least coming up soon, so we'll talk about him a little bit. But Mason Taylor, like I said, statistic wise, I see that being, the 50 for 500, 4 or 5 touchdown range for a rookie season, which is actually really good for tight ends. Like when we get to Brock Bowers, the outlier there on the rookie tight end season. Like I said, I see him being a staple and part of that offense.
I do too. I think we're going to rely on him a lot in this system. I think he's a great complement to Garrett as well. But getting into number 17, I got Cade Otton here. I like Cade Otton. I think he's very underrated. And like you made a good point earlier, when Godwin went down, Cade Otton stepped up as the number 2 option for Baker Mayfield. And you can even see it with his numbers. He's 26. He's still young, 26 years old. He's 6'5", 247 pounds, been in the league for 3 years, played in 14 games last year, 87 targets, so Baker's throwing him the ball, 59 receptions, 600 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns. Put that in a full 17-game season, those numbers are much better, and those tight end numbers or the touchdown numbers are much better as well. I like Cade Otton. I think he's very underappreciated. And I think he is a solid option as a tight end.
Yeah, and like I kind of brought up a little bit when the week after Godwin went down. Here's his first 4 games, or actually first 3 games we'll take the sample size of. So Godwin goes down the Sunday night game against the Saints. Or, it was the Saints, right? Or was it Chiefs?
I think it was the Saints.
Yeah,
You're
so
right.
He goes down the next week, 10 targets, 100 yards, 8 catches. 9 catches on 10 targets, 81 yards, and 2 touchdowns. 8 receptions, 11 yards, or 8 receptions, 11 targets, 87 or 77 yards, and a touchdown. So 100 yards, 87 yards, 77 yards for a tight end. As soon as Godwin went down, this guy was the key piece of that offense besides with Mike Evans. He did have a couple, games where they were starting to implement McMillan a little bit into that. And then he finished off with, a 3 catch for 70 yards game against the Raiders. So he does have the breakaway skill set as well on his end. Biggest concern with them is obviously going to be the new offense. How are they going to generate it? They signed Egbuka or drafted Egbuka, so I do think that he's going to take part away from Cade Otton, which is my big concern with him. But I think if any of those receivers is to go down, you're going to start seeing Cade Otton being relied on again because he made that repertoire last year with Baker Mayfield, and the comfortness of that type of player is going to be a key role as well. Battled a little bit through injuries throughout the year last year, but again, he was getting banged up because they were using him so much towards the end. So, but his great hands. He could obviously break tackles, as we talked about a little bit earlier. I do like Cade Otton a lot, actually, and I do see him becoming that cusp of a number 1 tight end as far as fantasy football. Not like number 1 overall, but being a solidable starter for somebody's roster.
Mm-hmm. Who do you have at your number 17?
17, I have Isaiah Likely.
I like Isaiah Likely a lot.
Yep.
I'm shocked you have him this low because Isaiah Likely could be like a stalwart in fantasy.
Yeah, and you have him on your list, right?
I do.
All right, so so I'll go back and talk about Mark Andrews a little bit then, since you don't have him on yours. The difference was Likely when Andrews was not on the field is solid number, like top 5 tight end you could possibly have in fantasy football. Because now we're not spreading the ball around to Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, and Mark Andrews. It was more so Likely is the guy in the red zone, and on intermediate passes, he was just king for the quick 2-3 yard outs because the receiving backs they don't have on the roster. As far as first and second down, Lamar looks towards Likely on those roles. Mark Andrews, very touchdown dependent, very up there in age, injury bugs. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the offense on that end goes. Again, if they're going to be leaning more towards Likely, who's coming up, I believe you said, on a contract year this year.
Yep.
And I think they're going to start steering away more so from Mark Andrews. So I do have Likely in the 17th range. Only thing on my end why I have him so much lower, as far as where your ranking is because in the fantasy world, he's going to have more of those disappearing acts where, last year he started off week 1 being the number 1 rated tight end to being unnoticeable for the next 3-4 weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see with Baltimore.
Those are really good points because he did have those disappearing acts, which were very noticeable.
Yeah.
Continuing on, we get to number 16. This is where I have Juwan Johnson from the Saints. I think he's another guy not talked about enough. He's 28 years old. He's 6'4", 231 pounds, 5 years in the league. Played 17 games last year, had 66 targets, 50 catches, 548 yards, receiving 3 touchdowns. I think his numbers are going to go up because, one, Derek Carr retired, so now you have 2 young quarterbacks there, Tyler Shuck being one, and you have Spencer Rattler there as well. So, or Desmond Ritter, I think is – which one is – I think it's Desmond Ritter there.
Yeah.
So, you guys, you're going to have 2 young quarterbacks, tight end's best friend. Juwan Johnson, I think his numbers are going to go up, and he's a freakish athlete. I think he's going to take that step like Jonnu Smith took last year and be like a really solid option as a tight end.
Yeah, and this is where the discrepancy goes now as far as like who's a great overall tight end and where you are for fantasy football. Juwan Johnson, I don't even have him on my top 32.
Okay.
Reason for that is because I do not trust Tyler Shuck. I don't trust Desmond Ritter. Whoever it is that becomes the Spencer Rattler, whoever it is that becomes that number 1 guy, I do not trust on that offense. I think this is the team that becomes number 1 overall for next year for Arch Manning. And there's more thought process on that end. From my end on that as to how NFL likes to run things and how fitting it would be to have Manning go to New Orleans.
Yeah, right.
So I do see them being the front runners for the number 1 overall pick. So I just don't think the opportunities on that offense is going to be there for him to do much relatively for fantasy. But now if I was, a GM and I need a tight end, he's a solid number 2, borderline number 1 to start as far as an actual like physical tight end. He's really good, versatile blocking tight end as well. But yeah, as far as fantasy, I have no relevance for him really at this moment.
Fair enough. And looking at him at that fantasy point, I think his fantasy numbers are going to be better because younger quarterbacks, you might not like to trust Shuck.
Yeah.
I think he's going to rely on his quarterbacks more, or Shuck is going to rely on his tight end more. And I think he's going to throw it to him a lot more, so his numbers might be better. Justin is siding with you on this one, Rich. I think he's getting not talked about enough. I think he's going to have better numbers than you think. And I wouldn't be shocked if he becomes that Jonnu Smith type of player, in my opinion. But you guys might be right when it comes to Juwan Johnson. You might be right on it. That's what this is about. We have our opinions on these tight ends. Love to hear you guys and your opinions on these tight ends. For those that are in here, make sure you're hitting that like button as well. Subscribe to both my channel and Rich's channel, which is FishBowl Fantasy Sports. Does a great job. And as you know, he's talking to us about the fantasy, how you want to pick your tight ends in this video, who he ranks higher and everything. And like that, he doesn't even have Juwan Johnson on his list for fantasy, which is very, very interesting. So he knows what he's talking about when it comes to fantasy numbers and players to take. But continuing on, my number 15 option, I have Pat Freiermuth. I love Freiermuth. I think having Aaron Rodgers now might, I don't know, because Aaron Rodgers doesn't like his tight ends. So I made this really before Aaron Rodgers was signed because I know Mason Rudolph liked to throw to tight ends. I don't know how his numbers are going to do now with him there. He might just force it to DK all the time. But Freiermuth is a solid option. He's 26 years old. He's 6'5", 258 pounds, been 4 years in the league, 17 games played last year, so he's very durable. 78 targets last year, 65 receptions, 653 yards receiving, and 7 touchdowns. So you see as the numbers. He put up some solid fantasy numbers as well last year. He's a solid option. I think Freiermuth can have some good numbers, but it really depends on what his relationship with Aaron Rodgers is going to be.
Yeah, that's the key thing with him. Obviously, you saw with, I would say just about average quarterback play. His numbers obviously went up a lot more. The 7 touchdowns, that's where we kind of expect him. He's one of those prototypical goal line or red zone area type receiving tight ends. So I do see his numbers being very similar as far as his usage on that. the offense hasn't changed much. Arthur Smith obviously loves using the tight ends. He's always used multiple tight end systems, but he does have the one reliant one that he does, and it's obviously Freiermuth here. And I actually have Freiermuth at 15 as well. Again, a lot of these guys with the quarterbacks that just got moved around, it's going to come down on the quarterback play. Tyler Conklin was a big guy for the Jets last year with Aaron Rodgers, as you said before, very reliant on third down roles. So I may be, with no other additional guy that they had besides Calvin Austin, which, him, Roman Wilson as well. We're waiting to see if one of these guys are going to be the next breakout guy for Pittsburgh. So I do see Pat Freiermuth being the number 2 option for that offense. So be interesting to see.
I think I completely agree with you on that one. It's going to be interesting to see what this new offense is going to do under Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. But going into number 14, this is where I have Kyle Pitts. I really like Kyle Pitts, and Justin and I actually have talked about Kyle Pitts. When the rumors came up, I was excited if the Jets would try to trade for him because I think he's a really solid option, and I think he mixes with Mason Taylor very well. He's the receiving option, Mason Taylor the receiving and blocking option. And I think Kyle Pitts would automatically become the number 2 option on the Jets behind Garrett Wilson as that bigger slot guy. I think a new change of scenery is good for him. He's 24 years old. He's still so young. His first year in the league, he went over for 1,000 yards. I understand that was with Matt Ryan, but Matt Ryan ended up going to the Colts that next year and was a disaster. So Kyle Pitts had great play with him, and then the quarterback play just went downhill. They had Spencer Rattler. They had Taylor Heineke. They had Marcus Mariota. They had Kirk Cousins last year when he was a disaster. They had Michael Penix come in for a couple games. There hasn't been quarterback stability for him since Matt Ryan for that 1 year. Mm-hmm. So I can understand why his numbers are declining. But he's 24 years old. He's 6'6", 250 pounds, a great size for a tight end. 4 years in the leagues, played 17 games, very durable, 74 targets, 47 receptions, 602 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns. His touchdown numbers have gone up by 1 every single year, so I see that trajectory still going up. And he's just a solid weapon. If he can work, I know he had some drop issues last year, but he's targeted a good amount. If he can work on the drop issues, still 602 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns, those numbers can get better and better. He just needs to change of scenery, and I think that could be beneficial for him.
Correct, and that's my biggest thing with him. He takes off plays. He's not obviously used as like a blocking tight end as much as they say. He's actually improved on it. And I honestly think that Penix, we've seen a little bit from last year where he force-fed Drake London when he has limited roles in there. I think Mooney's going to be improved a little bit. One thing that's nice about Kyle Pitts, every single year he has improved on his touchdowns from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. So that trending, he's looking at 5 then this year.
I'm excited.
So it'll be interesting again with him, but I'm going to take my shot here and say Baltimore Ravens 2026, Kyle Pitts is your tight end.
Really?
Because he plays just like Likely. So if they decide to move on from both him and Andrews, which I do expect them to move from Andrews next year, just imagine another specimen on that offense. And, if Derrick Henry could keep it up with his age going up, it would be interesting to see if they pull the trigger. Maybe even if there's something with like a trade for Kyle Pitts. So that's my shot I'm calling.
In all honesty, I definitely see Kyle Pitts being somewhere else. It wasn't the Ravens, but that's a solid option. I was actually thinking the Eagles.
Yeah.
Because they always take chances on these guys that are not up to their standards. Look at James Bradbury when he went there. It was solid for them after having some disappointing years. So maybe I definitely don't think they re-sign him at the end of this year. His contract's up. I don't think they want to get him back. But we will see with Kyle Pitts. Who's your number 14?
14, I have Goddard here.
Dallas Goedert? Yeah. You have him a lot higher than I do. Tell me why.
Same thing where I can't trust him as being my go-to guy because obviously injury concerns and the usage in the red zone. But when he does play, he does have that potential of being 8 for 80 with a touchdown. Consistency is going to be a key again, like I was talking about before with the Eagles receivers. Obviously they're much higher ranked than what they should really be. But I do like having him on that offense because again, it's a high-powered offense that's going to score touchdowns. So the more chances of those plays happening, I'd rather have the tight end that has a chance of getting those end zones, getting into the end zone. So that's why I have him a little bit higher.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. You're right. He does have that potential to break.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kyle Pitts does too, man. I really do.
But
getting into number 13, I got Cole Kmet. I love Cole Kmet. I know you said you were talking about Colston Loveland being their number one option. I think Cole Kmet is their number one option. He's 26 years old, still young, 6'6", 2,260 pounds. He's 260 pounds, 5 years experience, 17 games played last year, very durable, 55 targets, 47 receptions, 474 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns. I think those numbers get better now that Caleb Williams has another year in the NFL. And now that Keenan Allen isn't there, I think Cole Kmet's numbers are going to get a little bit better. And he's a solid blocker, solid receiver. I think he's going to get better and better.
I agree with you on that. And I do see him starting out being obviously their number one as they're going to work in Loveland, who I actually have at pick 16.
Okay.
For the reason why I have Loveland higher than Kmet is obviously draft capital being one. I do see Loveland being more so of a George Kittle type, where he does have the breakaway, mobility, and he's going to have those big explosive 30, 40-yard plays from a tight end, which is what you'd love to see. But yeah, I think there's just going to be more so of a fantasy outcome for Loveland as you will for Kmet. As not to say Kmet's a bad tight end. I would love to have him as a Titan. But as far as like being able to break away and make some more bigger plays, I think Loveland's going to be that guy for that team. And I'd rather take the upside of that rookie making those big plays more so than the guy that's going to give you the conventional, 4 for 40 kind of week.
All right. And Chris B has a comment here. Justin Mapes, hope you are doing well today, my friend. Go Jets. Would you want our New York Jets to add sign trade for one more tight end to go with Taylor, Ruckert, and Stone Smart? I would. I want a veteran in this locker room. Cole Kmet would be a perfect option. But the tight end I've been talking about other than Kyle Pitts has been Noah Fant. I think he'd be a solid option as well for the New York Jets. I think he fits the offense. I just think we need some more veteran leadership because the tight ends we have, you have Taylor, Ruckert, Stone Smart, like you said. You have Kuntz as well, who has never really shown anything. So I think another veteran option, that's why I've been so high on going for Kyle Pitts, because he's still young, but has that experience in the league as well and has that explosiveness that could complement a Mason Taylor to let him grow at a slower pace instead of just rushing him in, and could be perfect next to Garrett Wilson to ease some tension off of him as well. Because right now I'm not confident with Josh Reynolds as my number 2 receiver or Alan Lazard. I love Aaron, our new younger receiver that we got that is looking really good in OTAs and in minicamp. But as our number 2 option at receiving, whether it's tight end or receiver, it's Garrett Wilson, and then a giant drop off, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then you also, I do like the fact of like maybe Kmet going to, the Jets if that was something, because he already has the repertoire with Fields as well too. So
yeah. And Chris B with another comment. Thoughts about Andrew Beck, tight end fullback for our New York Jets? I don't think he makes the team. Honestly, I know it was one of our earlier signings, but I really don't think he makes the team. I think he was just brought in there as depth just to help the younger guys get into the system. Gerald Everett's an awesome option. Pitts, Fant, etc. You guys know my opinion on Pitts and Fant. Gerald Everett's not a bad veteran option either. Mm-hmm. I really like that one too.
Yeah, it's hard for teams to keep fullbacks on without like the game plans. So he could be like a guy that, they bring in, once every other couple weeks or so just to start.
Fullback's like a dying breed in the NFL,
Yeah,
man.
there's like 2 or 3 that are even in existence right now, right? You have Ricard, Juszczyk,
Yeah, and that's it, I think.
and like CJ Ham, I think, right?
Oh, yeah. Honestly. Who did you have as your number 13?
13, I have Tyler Warren.
Good option.
The draft position that they have, I'm really hoping for Daniel Jones, of all people, to be their quarterback.
He's looking great.
And that's what I'm hearing is that he's, regardless of the shoulder injury right now with Richardson, people believe that Daniel Jones would be the guy, which on my end as a Titans fan, I'm hoping for, because that means chances for more turnovers. But again, now fantasy-wise, there's chances for more big plays than if there's Daniel Jones as their guy. So I do have, like I said, Tyler Warren as my number 13. I'm interested to see where you got him. I know he got to be coming up soon. Yeah. I was like, I'm looking at the rest of the guys. I'm like wondering, how high has really got Tyler Warren on here? So.
I love Tyler Warren. He was my second option in the draft, other than Armand Membu in the first round. I was a big Tyler Warren guy. How I'm a fan of Penn State, so I was a big fan of his. He's only 23 years old. He's 6'5", 256 pounds. You look at what he did in college with Drew Allar as his quarterback. Solid receiver, great blocker, could throw the ball as well if you ever needed a gadget quarterback to do that, the tush push and stuff like that. I think he's going to be really good. And like you said, if Daniel Jones is the quarterback, Daniel Jones actually throws it to the tight ends. Yep. Anthony Richardson is more likely to run the ball than throw it. So Tyler Warren, I think, is just too talented not to be this high. I think he can be even better, but depending on the quarterback play.
Exactly like you said, this might be actually their best quarterback.
Honestly, yeah. Really.
But like you said, the difference between Richardson and Jones is, obviously they both have the mobility. They both know how to break away. Is like Daniel Jones, who when he was playing with the Giants had absolutely no offensive line for the most part in his career as a Giant. He was running for his life more so than nobody's open. I'm going to take the ball and run. As that was Richardson. He was more so not relying on his arm for the talent that it had. It was more so my first read's not there. I'm now going to run, which is obviously what's led him with the injury issues now. So it's going to be interesting to see Tyler Warren if he's that kind of guy that breaks out like a Brock Bowers, because to be honest, that receiving room for Indy is not, it has names, but they're not there really as far as their potential as what we hoped, like Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, who I do like this year. I can't see Tyler Warren stepping in and being the number 2 option with Daniel Jones as their quarterback.
I like Michael Pittman. I think he's much better than what his numbers were last year. Josh Downs is very solid. I hope Adonai Mitchell takes another step forward for them. That was real disappointing last year for him because he's too talented to have those numbers. But Tyler Warren, I do see being their number 1, number 2 option right now as the receiving option and number 1 quarterback option.
Yeah, they should start that their backup.
Honestly, who do you have as 12?
I have Ferguson here.
Wow. Yep. There's a lot of drop off between what you and I have as thinking with these guys. Yeah, but I like that a lot because I get to hear your opinion about them too. Why do you have Ferguson so high?
Like we were saying earlier, I just think Dak, I think he's going to have a better statistics season with Ferguson as he's going to with George Pickens. Reason why I say that is because with George Pickens being introduced reminds me of when they brought in Brandon Cooks. Mm-hmm. Brandon Cooks was a journeyman, but yet he always got it done, but was never utilized. And that's where I see with Dak, as he's still, a one-read guy. Maybe he gets back with, using 2 receivers and using them both as equally as we hope. But I think that he's going to rely a little bit more on Jake Ferguson, getting him back into, the swing of things. And I just think Jake's downside last year was, again, just the quarterback play from Cooper Rush. But not to say that Cooper Rush was bad, but, it wasn't, as what we can see with Dak at times.
I completely agree with you there. But not going into my number 11, we're almost at the top 10, which is exciting. But going into number 11, I have TJ Hawkinson. I think he's just really good. I think his numbers are going to be much better this year because Sam Darnold, every now and again he threw it to the tight end, but I think J.J. McCarthy is going to rely on him a little bit more because this is technically going to be his rookie season now. Yeah. This could be his first action. T.J. Hawkinson's 27 years old, 6'5", 248 pounds, 7 years experience. Played in 10 games last year, so durability issues are there. Had 62 targets, 41 receptions, 455 yards receiving, and 0 touchdowns. I think those numbers get better with McCarthy as the quarterback because I think McCarthy's going to rely on the tight end more, even though he's got Jefferson and Jordan Addison as his receivers. I think T.J. Hawkinson's going to be placed – more onus is going to be placed on him as well.
Yeah, he started on the injured list, I believe, last year. That was why he had only 10 games played. But again, now, like I was saying before with like your Dallas Goederts, the reason for Hawkinson not getting touchdowns was because they were scoring from the 20-yard range a lot with, your Jeffersons, your Addison, big plays from Aaron Jones last year. So he was kind of like the snake-bitten guy, tackled within the 5-yard lines a lot. But he was heavily targeted, though, when he came back in. I think he had, let me have some stats actually up. I actually have a much higher actually on my list than what you got, but last year he had, let me go in here. Yeah, like you said, 41 receptions, 455 yards.
Yeah.
Minus the touchdowns last year. He's got a, half of a season just like Dallas Goedert was, but a decent one from half the league that they had for people that played 16 games. So
yeah,
I do see him being used a lot. Like I mentioned, and you just mentioned J.J. McCarthy, his rookie season, so he's going to rely a little bit more on Hawkinson. Hawkinson's a really good third down guy too, as well as far as getting open. And you have the weapons on there to spread the defense out. So I think Hawkinson's going to have a big step up here this year, back to relevancy as what he had.
Okay, I completely agree with you. I think he's going to have a much better year this year.
Yeah.
Who do you have number 11?
Mark Andrews.
Okay. So you have both Ravens tight ends on here, which is good. Shows the weapons they have, man. Good weapons.
Yep. And again, offenses that can score, you want the tight ends of.
Oh yeah. That's why I was so happy I got Kittle last year. Even though he was out a couple games, Kittle was a lifesaver in some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Weeks where he won me games.
Yep.
We're finally to the top 10, which I'm really excited about. And starting it off at number 10, I have David Njoku. Guy, he should have much better numbers. I really think he should. And if Sanders is his quarterback, I think he's going to have much better numbers. He's only 28 years old. He's 6'4", 246 pounds. He's more of a receiving tight end anyway. Been in the league for 8 years. Played in 11 games last year, so he has to come back and play a full season. Had 97 targets, 64 catches, 505 yards receiving, and 5 touchdowns. He is your typical fantasy dream because he is that receiving tight end who can break it for a deep run or could be your solid option in the red zone. Honestly, if he stays healthy, those numbers are much, much better. But again, 97 targets, 64 catches. He was targeted a lot, but drops. Or bad quarterback play, because we know Deshaun Watson was awful. Then you had Jameis Winston coming in as well, who tends to throw a lot of picks.
It's funny, Njoku is my widest range of option right now as far as tight end. I have him on my list as high as 7, but he could easily be 25th, depending on the quarterback play.
I agree.
If Joe Flacco is his quarterback, Njoku could literally be the best tight end in football. Because Joe Flacco is going to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game. Now, if you put Kenny Pickett in there, Njoku is going to have weeks of no catches. So it's interesting. I do have him because I have it as Flacco winning the job.
I do too. He was my projected starter for the Browns.
So that's why I'm going based on projections with him. And if Shador is the one to step in for Flacco, if they did decide to bench him, because I do like Shador's asset. We talked about pre-draft. That was the guy I really wanted the Titans to draft. Who cares about the character issues? I think he is the best quarterback that came out of this draft. Give me the accuracy. If you're a good enough quarterback, you don't need to be throwing the ball 60, 70 yards down the field. If you could lead me, with 15, 20-yard pass plays and lead them with bullets, that's what I'm looking for in a quarterback. I don't need, the big arms of Josh Allen. I would love to have those arms from a quarterback, yes, with the skills that he also has. But again, time after time again, the biggest arm doesn't normally win the Super Bowl at the end of the year. It's the most accurate and the ones that can make plays, which I thought Shedeur was able to do. So, again, Njoku, depending on the quarterback, I have him on my list number 7 because I have him projected with Joe Flacco. Again, if it's Kenny Pickett or if it's Dylan Gabriel, he's undraftable, if you ask me. Kenny Pickett, he's borderline on my roster.
I don't think Kenny Pickett is going in fantasy. I don't think Kenny Pickett's a draftable quarterback. I think Shedeur is much more draftable than him.
Yeah.
Flacco is interesting because there were talks that Joe Flacco could win the starting job. There were also talks that he might not even make the roster.
Yeah.
So that just shows the dynamic of that quarterback room over there. Shedeur is putting up some numbers over there.
Yeah.
So who's your number 10? Who breaking into your top 10?
This is where I have Old Faithful Travis Kelce.
Ooh, you dropped him really far.
Yep. I think you started seeing last year as he was more so the situational tight end. Obviously, the targets were still there. He had over 100 targets. So he had like 90-something receptions or 80-something receptions with like 900 yards or something comparable with that.
Oh, we'll see because I have him coming up very soon.
Yeah, so that's where I had him. We'll talk a little bit more when we get up to him as well. Yeah, he had 97 catches for 823 yards. The touchdowns just weren't there like we're used to Travis Kelce. The offense, I do think the Chiefs' offense is hard to predict, but I'll go into that when we get into Travis Kelce on your end.
Okay. So continuing on, we get to number 9. I have Dalton Kincaid. I think his numbers are going to be much better coming out this season. I don't know what was going on with him. I know he missed some games and stuff like that, but he's a much better tight end than what we saw from him last year. So Dalton Kincaid's only 25 years old, 2 years in the NFL, played 13 games, had 75 targets, 44 receptions, 448 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns. He's much better than what we see him as. He's that typical receiving tight end as well. He's like a younger version of a Gesicki, in my opinion, but a more talented guy. So he's got speed. He's got the hands. It doesn't show here with the only 75 targets and 44 receptions, so there's a lot of drops there. But when he's on the field, he's another one, just like some of the guys we've talked about. You might not see him one week, but then another week he could have that 150-yard game, 8 catches, 2 touchdowns, something like that. That's the type of guy I think Dalton Kincaid is, and I think he has a bounce-back year coming up.
So he's actually one of my lower ones that I have that's on your list. I have him at number 18.
Whoa, okay.
And reason for that is we're never going to see Josh Allen not stop running the football.
Fair enough.
As much as it pains me that, as what I grew up obviously with Bills fans, family Bills fans and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
The red zone area he has not utilized. It is still Dawson Knox. So we're hoping that maybe this is the year that Kincaid is becoming that, 6-7 touchdown guy. However, that offense runs primarily on game plan situation. This is why you don't see them going after, the big wide receiving guy. They let Amari Cooper go, so they're only running with, Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman. These guys aren't big elite athletes, but they're situational.
Yeah.
Same thing now with Kincaid. Kincaid's going to be your guy, on third down because he could get open. He's going to be utilized in that way as, a situational guy. He may have, again, depending on the game plan, 8-9 catches one week or here or there. But now I think with them adding Josh Palmer to the roster, who has elite breakability as far as like getting wide open, that's going to take a little bit off of Dalton Kincaid. What concerns me again with Kincaid, red zone utilization. The trust is going to be there regardless, Bills fans I work with and whatnot. They talk about, how we're going to use him since the drop from last year in that game. That means nothing to me, whatever, cold weather situations, pressure moments, that doesn't matter much as far as fantasy at all. But like I said, the targets are going to be there. He plays in cold weather, so obviously games are going to be utilized as far as running the football. It's going to have a little bit of effect, but that's where I kind of have him so much lower than I did, obviously on your end. But he's a really talented tight end, and I do love the Gesicki comparison because that's actually how, like I said, I have Gesicki ranked 23rd on mine, so he's right in the same cusp as Kincaid. So that's interesting.
And it's interesting too. They did bring in a couple weapons. Elijah Moore is another one the Bills brought in as well. So that's going to be things taken away from him. But I don't think it's weird that you have like a player like Khalil Shakir who has the same type of style as Elijah Moore. You're getting all these smaller receivers, and I don't even think Khalil Shakir is the number one receiver there, even though he had better numbers. I think Keon Coleman's going to end up being the number one receiver. So it's going to be interesting to see there. But I just think that he's too talented not to be an option for them.
Yeah.
It's weird. Who's your number 9?
I have Tucker Kraft here.
Good option. I like Tucker Kraft. And you see, I haven't even gotten to him yet. I think he's coming up very soon, right here.
There you go.
Tucker Kraft, I think, is just very underutilized. Well, not underutilized. I'll take that back. Mm-hmm. Underappreciated. Yeah. Because you look at the Packers and you just talk about that receiving room. Christian Watson, Wicks. You got Reed. You got Romeo Doubs. You got Savion Williams now. You got Matthew Golden now. Tucker Kraft was really, really good last year. He's only 24. He was 6'5", 259 pounds, 2 years in the league, 17 games played last year, had 70 targets, 50 catches, 707 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. Those are awesome numbers for a tight end. But you don't talk about him that much because you talk about Jordan Love and the receivers or their running back over there in Josh Jacobs, who had some breakout games last year. Tucker Kraft is kind of the man left out, but a solid option here. And I have him as my number 8 tight end.
I love Tucker Kraft, and same reason actually as we just talked about Dalton Kincaid. So many mouths to feed, nobody at an elite status, but there's always somebody open on a play. So that's where, the targets obviously get taken away from him. But one thing with Tucker Kraft, he's the first guy in a hot minute that we had that actually played the full season.
Yeah.
In the fantasy world, Tucker Kraft is where it really starts as far as what we call tier-based rankings as well, where you want guys that are going to be, dependable starters, and then you have the guys that you kind of mix up with, depending on matchup, or if there's somebody hot in the free agency, you go drop them and pick up somebody else. He's where I had the cutoff at with, dependable number 1 options. Like I said, I even have him higher than Travis Kelce. Now, it's kind of like the outlier during that same tier, because obviously Kelce has that potential to always go off for 3 touchdowns. Kraft, I don't ever really see that being an option for him. But Green Bay's offense is awesome in fantasy, just because there's so many mouths to feed. We're hoping that, with Matthew Golden now, he's going to take over the Christian Watson big play plays, obviously. Yeah. Jaden Reed, he's the one outlier on that roster. Where he has those big breakout weeks where, again, he's kind of like a Khalil Shakir for Buffalo. He has those big games where, he's breaking free for 50, 60-yard touchdowns, or he just does a disappearing act. But Tucker Kraft was the obvious go-to guy every single week, 4 catches, 50 yards here, and maybe a touchdown. So he finds his way in the end zone, and that's what you want for fantasy.
I completely agree with you, man. And look, you just look at the numbers. 707 receiving yards for a tight end is really, really good. Yep. 7 touchdowns. Reliable. And like you said, 17 games. We were going through our list and it's they played 14, they played 10, they did this. Tight end is not an easy job. You're getting banged up, you're making contact blocking and getting beat up as a receiver as well. Mm-hmm. So Tucker Kraft being able to survive 17 games, kind of amazing. But who do you have as your you said you had Isaiah Likely as your number 8, right?
No, I had Likely at
it was
Evan Ingram.
Yeah, Evan Ingram. Yep. Continuing on, my number 7 tight end, Isaiah Likely. I think he's just another too talented guy. Lamar Jackson loves throwing him the ball. Looking at here, the numbers don't show it, but he, again, played 16 games last year. He had 58 targets, 42 receptions, 477 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns. The numbers aren't popping off the page what those touchdown numbers are for a tight end. he's just too freakish athletic. If he can start blocking, I think he kicks the other guy out of a job.
Andrews, yeah.
So Mark Andrews. He kicks him out of a job. The guy's too talented. Freakish athlete. If he can start blocking, it could be a real big nightmare.
Yeah, the only reason why I have Andrews much higher than I do on Likely is just for the simple fact that Andrews year after year has given me guaranteed 8 touchdowns. So that's the thing. You want, obviously, the touchdown pieces if you want tight ends. But like I said, Isaiah Likely this is the year for him, obviously contract year. So I expect big things from him a lot, actually. But as far as like draft capital, as you're seeing in fantasy, you're going to have Andrews up a little bit. But yeah, I can see Likely being that guy. Obviously, last year was his breakout year as far as touchdowns. Now you want to start seeing, the 60 catches, 600 yards, and that 8 touchdown range where you want to really see your elite tight ends.
Exactly. It's just interesting. I think his numbers are going to be much better this year.
Yep. And this is where Njoku at.
This is where you had Njoku at. Okay.
Yeah.
Continuing on, number 6, I got Travis Kelce. He's not in my top 5, but I still think he's still got something. And those numbers, look at the targets. He had 133 targets last year.
Yeah.
They're 823 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. The touchdown numbers aren't there. The targets are. And I know he's 35. This might be his last year coming up. But Patrick Mahomes is going to get him the ball. He will force it to him if he needs to. So, honestly, I couldn't have him drop him down further. I took him out of the top 5, but that was also a tough one because there are so many good tight ends up here now that I thought just usurped him now.
Yep. And the only reason why I have him ranked so low, obviously he's the only tight end besides out of the top 5 that we're going to have on either of our lists that are going to be away from that 100 target mark. Maybe one guy that we'll bring up in a little bit too that might be underneath it, but as far as like big plays. But Travis Kelce, again, he's going to be more so the situational guy. They have the weapons on offense as long as they stay healthy. You have your Rashee Rice, you have Hollywood Brown coming back, you have Xavier Worthy. Hopefully, you did nothing with his suspension on that.
Juju's still there as well.
So you got Juju, who's been the big third down guy for them. They drafted a rookie running back that I'm interested in seeing. Isaiah Pacheco should be coming back healthy. They still got Kareem Hunt on the roster. So they have a lot of mouths to feed, and they're not going to be so heavily reliant on Travis Kelce. Now, with that said, if something is to happen with, Worthy or, Rashee Rice, I do see Travis Kelce coming back to very similar to what we had last year. I have him projected for 83 catches, 800 yards, and 6 touchdowns, which, again, is still a really good good tight end season. But this just shows you now the caliber of the top 5 that we have on our list. I'm assuming besides one that I know we already went by that we have on our list, it's going to be very similar. But that's, again, the big drop off between the top 5 that we have to what, 6 through 10.
I'm interested to see how agreeable we are on these next ones. I'm interested to see what you've done. Who do you have as your number 6?
I have Sam Laporta here.
Ooh, Laporta. Okay. Why do you have Laporta at 6?
I think the offense is obviously going to be a little bit different since they don't have Ben Johnson this year. I don't think they're going to be as good. I know a lot of people are pushing the whole Frank Ragnow retiring thing, but he had actually injury bugs last year.
Yeah.
So he wasn't too much he wasn't the go-to reliable center as he once was. So I think they do take a little bit of a step back on that. But Laporta kind of had the disappearing act a little bit last year as well, but I don't know if that was more so on the offensive side, like the offensive scheme that they were running. Because again, Detroit scores a lot of points, so you're going to have disappearing acts when you have 2 juggernaut running backs scoring touchdowns all day, not needing to have to throw the football a lot.
2 juggernaut running backs and 2 really solid receivers in Jamison Williams, St. Brown, or not, Amon-Ra.
Yep.
Yeah.
And their defense is going to get better, so they're not going to have to be scoring 40, 50 points a game now to defeat teams. They're going to be playing more situational and more game clock management as what Campbell likes to do, but obviously, be more aggressive with it. So that's why I have him at 6. It's not really a knock on Laporta. I just like the other 5 better.
I agree. I'm really high on Laporta. I think he is very, very talented. And when it comes to Very, very talented. I'm really, really high on Laporta.
Mhm.
I really am. So we'll see. We'll see when we get lower. But we're breaking into the top 5, guys. And I'd like to take a moment for those. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. If you haven't hit that like button, make sure you do. Subscribe to our channels. Again, subscribe to the Jets Ward. Subscribe to FishBowl Fantasy Sports. It really helps our channels out as well and gets us through the algorithm to get to more people. And I hope you're enjoying. Make some comments in the below. Let us know how your tight end rankings are going so far. Do you agree with us? Are there changes you'd make? Let us know, and I hope you're enjoying the stream so far. We are getting into the top 5, and my number 5 tight end is Jonnu Smith. So he had really solid numbers last year, and you could see that right now. So another guy who reached over 100 yards or 100 targets, 111 targets. He had 88 receptions, 884 yards receiving, and 8 touchdowns. Guy was a monster last year. But right now, it's concerning to me that the Dolphins are even contemplating trading him. The Steelers have been very interested because I know Arthur Smith coached him when he was in Tennessee with you guys. So it's interesting that they're going to think about giving that up, even with those numbers, especially if Tua's back. Tua's going to get him the ball. And this was their red zone threat last year. And like if you're just in the red zone 20-yard line, this is the guy they were going to. So it's shocking to me that he would be on the trade block. But Jonnu Smith, the talent, he popped off last year, and I think those numbers are going to get even better.
Yeah, and as a Titans fan, I had been waiting for the last 5-6 years for this man to finally come off because I loved him when he came out of college. I loved his skill set. Probably the fastest tight end in football. And he's actually a pretty decent run blocker as well, too, and that's why he gets on the field so much. This one's a tough one because I actually have him at 5 on my list as well because the targets are there. The intermediate throws are going to be there. If it's not checked down to Devon Achane, he's the next option that they have. I think the targets are going to be kind of an outlier a little bit because, again, Waddle was dealing with injury issues. Tua being in and out of the roster, he was more heavily relied on because they couldn't get anything with Tyreek Hill at all last year. But you like the 8 touchdowns. Jonnu is a guy, again, that could break free for 50, 60-yard plays. And like I said, depending on the health of Tua, that moves the Dolphins' offense in fantasy. So if he's in wake, I always project no injuries because that's just what we do in our world. But with a healthy Tua and the quick offense that they have, I love the piece of Jonnu Smith here at 5.
I'm glad we agree. I'm glad we agree on this one. I thought he was going to be a little higher on your list because of the numbers for fantasy purposes, but the guy's too talented. But again, concerned that he's on the Dolphins might trade him, so they might be seeing something in him.
Yep.
But going into number 4, I got George Kittle. He is my number 4 tight end. The reason is injuries, man. He's always hurt. No, he only missed 2 games last year, but still, he was targeted 94 times, had 78 catches, went over 1,000 yards, was 1,106 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns as well. The guy, owning him in fantasy last year was awesome. I loved when he played because I knew Purdy was going to give him the ball. I think he's going to get more opportunity now because they're talking about Jennings being their number 1 receiver. You don't know what's going to happen with Brandon Ayuk. So it's the George Kittle show there. In my opinion. So I think his numbers are going to be really, really good. But again, he gets dinged up a lot. He does miss games. So that was the concern. I love the numbers. Think he's a great tight end, but he's my number 4 pet tight end.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where he just doesn't control his body. So he plays like a weapon, and then his body feels it after the game, and that's the issue with him. He averages missing about 2, maybe 3 games a year. Yeah. But when he's on the field with Brock Purdy, the man's elite. Since Brock Purdy's been their quarterback, he's actually, I think, been the number 1 points per game fantasy-wise tight end. And he actually was last year. Points per game played, he was number 1 as far as tight ends played.
So Matty can't be my keeper this year.
Yeah, for many people. The only thing that's keeping me from making him my number 1 is like you said, dependability, and he's going to miss a couple games. So, and that's like guaranteed with him. That you just predict for that. But again, it's 94 targets, 78 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Difference between him and my next two guys that I have, or next probably two guys that you have on your next list, is going to be the touchdowns. He's always going to be in that 7 to 8 touchdown range, but with his skill set, giving you 1,000 yards too, he's literally a number one receiver for most actual NFL teams with those stats. But again, now you're getting rid of, or not getting rid of Ayuk. He's obviously with the injury and whatnot. He's their number one option, like you said, and he finds ways to get open, and that's why I love George Kittle. And he has those weeks where he could win you weeks just because he's giving you 30 points in a fantasy.
And he did. He did.
Yep. Yeah, so I actually have George Kittle at number 3 on my list. So number 4, I have T.J. Hockenson.
Ooh, okay. I'm shocked I haven't heard one guy on your list yet. I'm interested to see where you have placed him. I think I know where you placed him because I think I know who your number 1 tight end is based on numbers last year. But we'll see. My number 3 guy might end up being your number 2 guy. And it's somebody that I don't think is talked about enough because when you think of this team, you think of 2 players at this moment. I have Trey McBride as my number 3 tight end. And the reason for that is I think he doesn't get talked about a lot because you have Marvin Harrison Jr. over there, who is their big weapon, their shiny new toy over there, who I don't think had that great of a season last year. I think for all the hype that he was. And you think of Kyler Murray and James Conner over there as well. That's their offense. But Trey McBride, he had 147 targets, 111 receptions. Another tight end who sneakily went over 1,000 yards receiving, 1,146 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. The touchdown numbers I wish were a lot higher. But the guy, Kyler Murray, loves this guy. He's their number 1 option there. Honestly. And I don't think he's talked about enough. I think he's underappreciated. The guy's sneaky good.
He's my number 2.
Yep, I figured.
The only thing is your touchdowns. No touchdowns until week 17 with this guy. You look at those stats and you tell me you have 111 catches, 1,100 yards with almost 150 targets, and you only have 2 touchdowns. That screams the offensive issue, or you just don't have the reach in your arm to make it an extra inch. And that's what happened with McBride, and that's why James Conner, scores so many touchdowns and whatnot.
That's what I'm telling you. James Conner is their red zone guy.
Trey McBride is an absolute monster. And if it wasn't for their offense, whether or not if I could trust them to be, as high powered as it was, depending on Kyler Murray and whatnot, he would be in my number 1. Just for the simple fact, like I said, you look at his stats and you don't look at the touchdowns because I don't think that outlier of 2 is going to happen again for this year. I actually see him more so 100 receptions, 1,000 yards, and probably 5 touchdowns, which again is going to be elite status for tight ends, and that's where I have him projected for number 2. And I have George Kittle at number 3.
Okay. Nice. Now, getting into the top 2. I know who your number 1 is. Your number 1 is my number 2. I have Brock Bowers as my number 2 tight end. The reason for it, he was a rookie last year. I get it. He had an amazing season. Kyle Pitts, I will mention, was a 1,000-yard receiver in his rookie year, and then the numbers have gone down for him. Brock Bowers had a great season last year. Targeted 153 times, 112 receptions, 1,194 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. New coach, new quarterback, new system. You also have Michael Mayer over there, too, who I think is a very underappreciated tight end. Geno Smith did not throw to tight ends. So I don't know if Brock Bowers' numbers are going to be the same. So he's elite. I will say he's elite already, but he needs to prove it again that he can put these numbers up. One season, great. Show me you can consistently do it like some of the top tight ends in the league have proven. That's why he's my number 2. It might not be the best reason. It's a prove-it reason, though. And in this new system, let's see if you can learn it. Let's see if you can run it. I think the numbers are going to go down a little bit, too, because now you have their shiny new toy as a running back, Genty. You have the receivers there are still okay. Jacoby Myers, I think, is still okay. He's not – to me, he's a solid number 2, not a number 1. But I think Genty, they're going to be more of a running attack team, in my opinion. But that's why I have Brock Bowers as my number 2 receiver.
Right. And I do have, as far as the statistical season, I do have Brock Bowers stepping back a little bit again on his targets, his reception total, yardage. Yes, I expect touchdowns to actually kind of go up because again, improving with the offense, and what they were doing with the coaching change, bringing in Geno. I think their offense is going to be obviously a little bit better than these stats are with Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell last year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, for a tight end to get those kind of totals there with that kind of quarterback play is just ridiculous. I do think, as we were just saying now with Geno not using the tight end as much, he used the tight end a lot in the red zone, which is what I'm going to like about Brock Bowers. So like I said, I do project touchdown totals to go up, maybe to 8 cusp, but there's no definitive number one receiver. Now they did draft Jack Besh out of TCU, so I do see him being more so like that guy to take away some goal line play. But he's more so used because he's the number one, probably like rated receiving, blocking, rushing, run blocking receiver that we've seen in a hot minute for drafts. Yeah. And that's why, again, they drafted Ashton Genty. They have Brock Bowers. Michael Mayer's more so the blocking tight end of the two. And then they drafted Besh because they're obviously going to improve on the running game because they're going to be built like the Teens Seahawks kind of roster. If you look at it that way. But yeah, Brock Bowers, it's an outlier, obviously, because rookie tight ends don't have these monster seasons. But realistically, Jacoby Myers, like you mentioned, and you pointed it out, a really good number 2 option. Brock Bowers is the go-to guy for this offense, and he's going to get all the targets in the world on that. I hope he keeps healthy because him starting off with his career with that kind of numbers, and he played every single week. So I mean, to do that for the Raiders, and you're going to be in a bunch of shootouts because your defense is subpar, but that's why I have it. But I'm absolutely shocked at your number 1. I have Trey McBride at number 2.
I like I said, I love this next guy. Laporta, I think, is the best tight end in the league. Overall, blocking-wise, receiving-wise, in all honesty, I think he's the best one. I think his numbers are actually going to go up because I think John Morton's offense, who's the Detroit Lions' new offensive coordinator, he likes to throw it to the tight ends. He likes to utilize them a lot more. I think they're going to throw more. You still got Goff as your quarterback who loves to throw it to tight ends. And just looking at him, fantasy-wise, too, he had 7 touchdowns last year. He was targeted 83 times, 60 receptions, 726 yards receiving. I know those numbers don't pop off. 7 touchdowns. You're probably thinking, going off of just what we were talking about with 1,000-yard receiving tight ends. Laporta overall as a tight end, great blocker, great receiver, utilized in intermediate, utilized in the red zone, was their go-to option on short yardage and red zone yardage. If Goff wasn't popping off with the long passes to Amon-Ra St. Brown, he was giving it to Laporta. That was his go-to guy. Now, I will say that it was very, very difficult with these 3. I was flip-flopping them a lot, especially Bowers and Laporta. McBride was a little bit easier for me because I think he's solid, and I think he's going to keep putting up those numbers. But I think the Cardinals are still trying to get more weapons at the receiving option, which are going to take a little bit more of those numbers away from him.
Yeah.
Brock Bowers and Laporta were the toughest ones for me, but I just think overall, I think Brock Bowers is going to take a big step back, and I think Laporta is going to take a big step forward because, again, he's only 24 years old, has only been in the league 2 years, so I think he's going to take that leap again and just get better and better.
Right, and the thing with Laporta is we're only a year away from him having that big injury.
Yeah.
And he actually just worked himself right back into the offense, obviously. So it took a little bit of time for him to get kind of like acclimated back into his kind of thing. But I don't disagree with you because again, I have Laporta at number 6.
Yeah.
And Laporta is the last of that tier that I have where you are having such a substantial difference making tight end compared to the rest of your league, where this is why you're seeing these tight ends being drafted, end of this first round if you want to go crazy for Brock Bowers, second round for Trey McBride, third round for Kittle, because you want those guys that are going to separate yourself from the league from what they have. Because once you get past these guys and you start playing, Tucker Kraft, Kelsey, Andrews, you're becoming touchdown dependent guys. So without those touchdowns this week, you're not really getting much. As Laporta, who is the number 3 option on that offense, he's on a team that's going to score points, obviously. Well coached, so you don't have the issue with, decision makings, which I also like a player that's going to be on the field for 4th down more often than others, because you're giving your player an extra down to, a drive. But like I said, like you were actually just talking about, so Laporta is probably the number 1 overall tight end in football, just because this is a black scheme too. So that's where our rankings are a little bit different. But I do like the Laporta pick at number 1.
And like I said, it's so tough picking between him, McBride, and Bowers, especially with what Bowers did last year.
Yeah.
If he can produce those numbers again, then he's hands down the best tight end.
Yeah.
I love that both of us were dropping Kelsey a little bit because those numbers were coming off a little bit. He's an age too. So it's going to be interesting to see where these tight ends go. But in all honesty, I think our lists were very, very solid.
Yeah.
I think we both had some great options. I think we both came up with some good points. Let us know how you guys think we did. Do you have similar quarter or tight end rankings? I'm really excited to do these power rankings with you, and I'm glad, Rich, you joined me. I hope you join me again for Detroit or the defensive tackles that I'm planning on doing, edge rushers, things like that. Going over number 1 options for each one. Doing power rankings that way. And I love adding in the fantasy aspect of it too, because in a lot of fantasy leagues, and Rich can speak on this too, a lot of people do defensive players, not just defense and special teams. So Rich, do you want to add more onto that?
Yeah, which is actually interesting. So friends of mine for the last probably 5 or 6 years have been waiting to do it, but this is the first year we're running a defensive player only league this year. So it's interesting because this is the first time we could actually do some more deep dives as to what we project for defensive players, as it's going to be a position of need in our league. But no, I'm excited for it. I mean, anytime you give me the opportunity to jump on, I'm always here to help you guys out. Definitely support the Jets Word podcast. He does live streams usually weekly for you guys. Up-to-date news. He's not only just Jets talk. He's, any kind of breaking news comes out, he's hops right on it, on YouTube and whatnot. So definitely give him a look. He's over 1,000 viewers, 1,000 subscribers now. So that's awesome to have on there as well. So I'm glad to see the channel rising up for you guys. But no, thank you again for giving me the opportunity to express my opinion and, give some more fantasy insight for you guys.
Oh, you're always welcome here, man. And if you guys like what you heard tonight, please subscribe to Rich's channel too, FishBowl Fantasy Sports. Great when it comes to all the fantasy talk. He knows what he's talking about. He knows these players, dives deep into these guys. He is really, really good and just does a great job and teaches me a lot of things about fantasy as well and a lot about these players. So I appreciate him as well. And Rich, you're always welcome here in the Jets Ward, no matter what. I always love live streaming with you. We got to do this more often.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, you let me know. I'm going to be here for you, man.
But guys, thank you so much for joining us. We've almost been on here for almost 2 hours. We were thinking we were going to get out of here, talk quick, but you know how it goes in the Jets War. We love to talk sports with you guys. But again, if you like what you heard, please like and subscribe. Subscribe to both our channels for amazing content. And again, thank you guys so much for joining us in the JETS Jets Ward. Have a wonderful rest of your night, guys. Enjoy it.